Hello and welcome to Keep Right On, a Birmingham City podcast brought to you from us here at Birmingham Live. I'm Brian Dick and now I've got Alex Dicken's attention. Stop fiddling around with his chair. Alex, are you well?
Hi, thank you, Brian.
Good.
Very
Yeah.
well.
Is the chair okay? You're not going to fall off it?
It is not. It's not the best chair in the world. It's a nasty wooden one, but it'll have to do for the purpose of this.
All right, we live in comedic hope in that case. Alex and I are going to discuss Friday night's 1-1 draw at Wrexham. Some interesting features there. What was quite a surprising lineup named by Chris Davies, and then at this point in the season, the second international break, we're going to throw it forward a little bit and see how we think Blues have got on in the first couple of months and where they need to improve. Alex, let's start with Friday night. You were at the game. What was your main takeaway from that?
There were a few. I would probably point out that it was a very different game to the 1-1 that Blues played back in January. I'm not sure whether that was Blues being better or Wrexham being better, to be honest. I think Wrexham played a slightly less direct way, which I think you would expect with the quality of player they've now got. People like Kiefer Moore, who isn't just a centre forward who's going to win headers, but someone who's going to bring the ball down and bring his teammates into play. And the two players they had playing off him, Josh Windass and Lewis O'Brien, very good championship operators, just made for a better game, I think. Blues played their part in that game. They were undone by Wrexham early on from again another set piece, which we'll come on to. But once they got into it, they had some moments in the first half, mainly through Damari Gray. Probably should have scored the second one just before half time. And then second half, they obviously equalised within 20, 22 seconds of the restart. And from then on, there weren't a great deal of opportunities for Blues to score, but they weren't for Wrexham either. It was a very, very kind of tight game. Blues might have just shaded it in the eyes of Chris Davies. They did, but I think a point was probably fair. Yeah,
Chris Davies rarely says the opposition shaded it. Even at the CBS Arena, there was no shading done at all, was there? I agree. I thought what Davies did say, which kind of made sense actually, was it felt like a Birmingham game rather than a Wrexham game in his post-match. And I got what he meant by that, didn't you? The last trip to that stadium, it was an absolute bun fight and Blues were doing all they could to hang on. The balls going into the box and it all felt a bit white knuckle and it was just a question of, could Blues win the first contact in the air? The point you made about this one is it felt quite similar. There wasn't the big style difference, was there? I didn't feel there was a difference, but it certainly wasn't as pronounced. A good point. I think, quite honestly, if you'd have said to me before the game, you can have a 1-1 draw, I'd have gone, thank you very much. Because given the way how poor Blues were against Sheffield Wednesday for much of that game, or the way they lost control of the Sheffield Wednesday game, and again, to use Davis's phrase, allowed it to become what it became. I was pretty despondent after that game and feared for Blues going to Wrexham. A 1-1 draw, certainly not a terrible result. The results haven't been good, so we probably, they do need a win, but just in isolation, this game, not a terrible result. You teased the set piece thing, Alex. Is it just another one to throw on the pile against whoever's doing it? I mean, we assume it's Jonathan Graham still doing the set pieces, or that there's maybe more to it than just what's going wrong or going on on the training ground.
Yeah, well, I think looking at the set piece problems Blues have had this season, so they've conceded 6 goals. According to who scored, I'd probably take one of those away because it was that throw-in that led to Fatawa's goal against Leicester. So if we say 5, they're still one of the Championship's worst teams on set pieces. Chris Davies has himself pointed out the lack of height issue. We've said that on the podcast. I do think that was an oversight in the summer's recruitment. They signed, a lot of good players, a lot of kind of, players with high pedigree, but they haven't signed many big players. And it sounds very simple to say, but that is costing them on these set pieces at the moment. Interestingly, the one against Wrexham, I thought, was probably, I'm not sure you'd put it down to a lack of height. So if you watch it back, and I've watched it a couple of times this morning, the ball comes in, and I think Christoph Clara, who is the guy who we expect to go and win all these headers, who's probably had way too much aerial work to do in the opening weeks of the season. But he's the guy in the middle of the 3 zonal players that Blues station along the 6-yard line. And I think he might have just misjudged the flight of the ball because he's gone out to try and meet it. And in doing so, he's kind of got into a battle with Lyndon Dykes and Max Cleworth, but not quite reached Cleworth, who's headed the ball back where Clara was stood in his first place in the zonal area. And then George Dobson has been left free, so he's nodded it over James Beadle. I wonder if Clara had stayed in that position and not gambled and tried to go and meet the ball and let Dykes battle Cleworth, whether he'd have just been able to pick up the pieces and clear it from when the ball was knocked down by Cleworth. But yeah, another set piece goal. And Blues do need to sort it out because they haven't scored from one season. That's -6, isn't it, on set pieces? So it's costing them.
You can understand why Clara thinks there's a header that I probably can win. I probably should go and win it, though, can't you?
Well, yeah, because we mentioned
because there's no one else.
Yeah, we mentioned it at the CBS Arena when he was just kind of at one stage early in the second half before they scored their second. He was just repelling the danger with headers, header after header.
Yeah.
And he clearly feels a sense of responsibility, knowing what's around him and knowing there isn't really anyone else who's going to go and do it. So you can't really blame him feeling that he has to go and make contact. But, if you look at it back, if he'd stayed still and allowed Dykes to battle Cleworth, it might have ended differently for me.
Yeah. You mentioned about the lack of height in the transfer recruitment as a whole. Obviously, a lot of people were talking about after that game, had Phil Neumann been there, then it might have been a different outcome. Neumann might lack certain attributes. Height is not one of them. Do you think, obviously, Davies is not picking Neumann at the moment, and it doesn't look like he's going to. It felt like a big opportunity to get Neumann and his height back in the side on Friday night, didn't it? Even only at right back, and he went with Tomoki Iwata. I suppose we're going to bleed into the next area next topic we want to talk about a little bit as well. Do you think the fact that they knew the bombardment was coming, the set pieces would be dangerous, he knew that Neumann wasn't going to be playing, do you think that maybe informed his decision to pick James Beadle? Because he's, just going on Wikipedia alone, James Beadle is about 10 centimetres taller than Ryan Alsop. Albeit didn't really count for much when he was rooted to his line for the first goal anyway. So I don't know. It's a general point about height and lack of it in the box at the moment.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought James Beadle played well, but I wouldn't say he's any more commanding than Alsop based on what we've seen so far. Alsop is naturally a goalkeeper who likes to stay close to his line in those set piece situations, and Beadle wasn't exactly coming out to claim the crosses, was he? So
no.
I think he's more of a shot-stopping goalkeeper, as most modern-day goalkeepers are, rather than someone who is going to come out and claim those crosses.
Just looking at some of those selections, the one that stood out for me was Tomoki Iwata at right back, which obviously allowed Mark Leonard to come into central midfield. Iwata did okay, didn't he? We can all sit here and say he's not a right back, albeit he's played quite a lot of right back, and he probably isn't a natural right back, and he's certainly not in the mould of Laird or say Samuel. But on the day in that match in isolation, he did okay, didn't he?
Yeah, I think that some of the thinking was down to Iwata having played at right back at Celtic and the way that he inverted into midfield from that position. And I think Iwata actually varied it up really well against Wrexham, because sometimes he inverted and allowed Patrick Roberts stay wide right, and sometimes he pushed on a little bit and allowed Roberts to go inside. And I think the combination of him and Roberts worked really well, because Roberts is someone who, left-footed, naturally will come inside, but he's also someone who can stay wide and likes to play wide a lot of the time, he'll touch line. So it worked really well. The combination offered a lot of variety and confused Wrexham a little bit, and Blues had some joy going down that side, as we obviously, probably going to come onto the goal they scored came from Patrick Roberts. So yeah, it worked.
It can be quite effective as well. We saw the Leicester team that went up a couple of years ago. They had Ricardo Pereira that would notionally start at right back. Then they'd have 65% of possession. So he'd spend 2/3 of his time, making up a midfield three, or, dropping into a central position in midfield. So it was recognisable what Davies was trying to do with Iwata there. What were we coming on to there? Slipped my mind complete. Mark Leonard,
Mark Leonard, So obviously it allows him.
Pass the ball forward, man, please, in the first half.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I think that was one of the things that Chris Davies pointed out to them at halftime. Martin had got on the half turn so many times and just would play sideways or backwards. Yeah. Didn't want to take a risk in possession. Maybe that was because when he did try to play a blind pass early on, it was intercepted and almost led to a Wrexham goal. So maybe he was kind of just he should have feeling the effects of that. But second half, I thought Martin had played quite well and drove.
The other side of that coin is that if Leonard's got the ball and he's on the half turn and he can't see someone ahead of him, then he's not going to pass it, is he? So there are two sides to that situation, and that kind of bleeds into. I thought Jay was really poor in the first half as well, and if Leonard's looking up and can't see Jay or can't see Dykes, or can't see Gray, someone ahead of him, then he is going to be going sideways or backwards, and that leads to the movement that these central midfielders are seeing in front of them. And at times, you can see it set up in the stand, can't you? The movement is either non-existent or not good enough.
Yeah, they're not. They weren't massively fluid in that first half. I didn't like a lot of the performance in the first half. I thought they took a little bit of time to get out the blocks and obviously were behind before they started to play. They had moments through Demarai Gray's individual quality, which is something I think they need to harness more. I do think inside the tactical setup they've got, and they had it was a little bit of an issue last season, but they do need to find room for, one or two kind of individual players who are allowed to kind of, have the tactical flexibility to just play freely. And create the word Chris Davies mentioned last season was chaos, wasn't it? And to create chaos, to do those things, Demarai Gray is definitely the person who can do that. I do think at the start of the season we've seen him just playing to the team a little bit too much, and maybe there needs to be a role there or an understanding that he can come off script at some stage and go and play freely and hopefully get better numbers and score more goals.
To be fair, you or I don't know if Chris Davies is telling Demarai Gray, whatever you do, don't lose it. Play backwards if you have to. He's probably not, is he? So there's an element of player responsibility as well, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know, what the kind of message is to Leonard, or sometimes when the ball's circulated around the pitch when Blues are playing and it goes to the left winger and he says Demarai Gray and he faces man up, they go back quite a lot, don't they? And that's to keep possession and minimise the risk. I'd sometimes just like to see him in that position where he's got Kaboré stood up and just go it, just take him on, try and get past him, because I thought Kaboré was a terrific athlete, really good going forward, but we didn't see him tested massively defensively as a right back in that game.
No, there were a couple of instances where Kaboré gave Alex Cochrane a couple of nightmares, weren't there? I thought Cochrane was overmatched athletically by Kaboré at times. Sorry, go on.
No, that is something we highlighted before the game, wasn't it? And something we have seen. Kaboré, I think at this level, is probably one of the better athletes Cochrane is going to come up against, but it's not the first time that he's been found wanting in that area.
Last podcast, a bit of response was that we didn't give Jay's performance enough analysis. Let's spend a little bit of time on Jay now. I've already said I thought he was pretty anonymous in the first half. Obviously, he starts the second half with a really good assist, and he actually played a pass that you or I were wondering whether we had in his locker a few days ago before that, didn't he? Then again, there was a couple of threatening moments, but nothing. He didn't ever really. I don't think he looked like. Did he have a chance? I don't think he did. Did he? Trying to think back now.
No, he didn't.
Thoughts about Jay's overall performances this season, not just on Friday night?
I think he's been the victim of the problem that Blues have had in the number 10 position. I look at Jay Stansfield and I want to see him as the furthest forward. I want to see him as a striker. I think he's still the best solution for that position. Yeah. I think maybe if Willemsen
the 10 position or the 9 position,
the 9 position, he's the best solution for both at the moment. I think. Yeah. I would like to see him as the 9. I think the way Blues play, they need a centre forward who can run in behind. And I think Stansfield is a more complete package at this point than Kyogo is. If Stansfield gets one of those chances, I would back him to score. He's a good finisher and has proved that this season. He's got 4 goals. His returns are good. I don't think he affects games as much as he can in possession from the 10 position. Especially in the way that Blues play. It's very different a couple of years ago when they're playing a completely different style under John Eustace, and Jay would play as the 10 sometimes. He'd play wide as one of the, 3 attacking midfield players. And, it was a different style of football. They weren't on the ball so much. It was largely springing counter-attacks, and they were good at that. I don't think he suits the 10 position in this system as much. I think he'd be better as the 9. But in terms of his performances in it, over the whole season, I think he's had some good moments. We look at the assist that he got against Wrexham. I think that's something different to his game that I wouldn't necessarily expect from him. I thought he played a decent ball to Kyogo down the right second half that kind of gave him the chance to do a cross-come shot that eventually came to nothing. There were moments in Stansfield's performance, and what I still would say is we can be critical of him because we expect so much of him because, his previous 2 seasons at Blues, he's been, head and shoulders the best attacking player. He still is the best attacking player, really, in terms of output and what he's actually bringing to the party, I feel.
He's got his 4 goals this season, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's twice as many as the next player, Lyndon Dykes, and 4 times as many as a few others. And what, whatever the maths around that is, way more than people who haven't scored yet. So, yeah, whatever the problem is, Jay should be allowed his fluctuating form. Some games are better than others. I would say at Blackburn, it was Jay Stansfield was one of 2 players that really put the team on his back, and went about trying to inspire that what turned out to be a comeback win. So, yeah. If there are some brickbats to be thrown around, I don't think too many should go really in Jay's direction, albeit he's not perfect at every game. There's 2 Tom Wagner lines here I want to talk to you about. The one you've put on the document is Tom Wagner's words on Sky. Chris has the complete and total confidence of the board, period, full stop. I think they're the same thing, aren't they? Periods and full stops. And that's not news to us, I don't think, is it? Because if we think back to the end of season awards, Tom Wagner was on stage saying that Chris Davies isn't going nowhere for a very long time. And he doesn't strike, I'd have been really surprised, had there been a change in narrative since then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you can't give the speech that Tom Wagner gave that night, no. And then 5 months later, get itchy feet and decide that Chris Davies isn't the manager that you thought he was, because he's done a very, very solid job in getting Blues back up to the Championship. I think, given the number of players they signed in the summer, which is probably more than I thought they would initially, or probably should have, I think he's obviously got to be given time to mould it together. Blues, 2 years ago, sacked a manager at this time of year, and that had horrible, fatal consequences, didn't it? So I'm not surprised at all. They're going to be patient and give Chris Davies time to implement what he implemented last season.
Yeah, indeed. The point you've made there is right about the recruitment. He's still trying to find the right pieces for the jigsaw. I saw a quote that he said to you, I think pre-match, was something like, "It's not about me learning the division," or something like that. And I still think it is about him. He's still quite inexperienced, whether he likes to admit it or wants to publicly admit it or not. He is still quite inexperienced. But, I've seen, I think we've both seen enough during his time at Blues where he'll never say, "Oh, I got this wrong, I got that wrong." But there'll be a tacit admission, in the next game, there'll be a change of style or a different selection or some players charged with a different job. You think back to the, Blues were very tippy-tappy at the start of the League One season. Then they realised that they could go long and Ryan Alsop could stick the ball over the back 4 to Keshi Anderson. It's not all dogma. There is an element of pragmatism, I think, to Chris Davies. I've been really surprised by the level of criticism aimed at him, because I don't think the division is harder, and I don't think the recruitment what he bequeathed from the recruitment team was fantastic. And yes, I do think there has been errors, and we've talked quite a lot about the narrative that he came up with post Coventry, which both you and I were quite surprised with. But as I say, I don't know that changing manager at this point. Well, I do know that changing manager at this point is a bad idea.
Yeah. What I will add to that about recruitment. So Blues signed 12 players. They signed some, big names are in there, or players who've done very, very impressive things over the last 3-4 years, particularly Kyogo and Marvin Dutch. Damari Gray's played 200 games in the Premier League. Patrick Roach has got promoted. Jack Robinson has been, competing right at the top of this league for the last 5 years, or if not, been in the Premier League with Sheffield United. Some good players on paper there. Some players that we did highlight at the time that are on the older side, that are in their 30s, and two in particular, Kyogo and Marvin Dutch, have been given 3-year contracts. That for me would be a red flag if Blues didn't go up this season. I feel like it's very, very short-term thinking. You are hoping to go up, because if not, they're probably not going to be as good as they are this year, next year, because they're obviously getting into their, the twilight years of their careers. Hopefully, one of those two players can start taking some of the load off Jay Stansfield with the goals, and then maybe we can kind of get goals from elsewhere, and then maybe Blues can start moving up the table. But the recruitment in general, if you look at the whole picture, I look at Blues squad compared to other teams in this league, and I do think it stacks up. I do think it is a strong squad, which is why we're seeing very good second half performances, or better second half performances, and Blues particularly look strong towards the latter stages of games. However, there are teams that I look at in this league, Coventry being one, and I'm not just picking them because they're top of the league. I would have been saying this back in August, September, whenever we put our predictions out. I think they've got a stronger starting 11 than Blues. And I do think there are better 11s. And a major issue is Chris Davies still doesn't know what his best 11 is, which is why we've seen the last 2 games, I think 5 changes apiece. So Blues are still tinkering and trying to find out the best solutions.
Not helped by the fact that maybe some of those parts of those solutions keep getting injured. Keep getting injured, but Keshi is injured, although he's back now. Willemsen is injured. Dutch, when you just think, right, okay, maybe Blues have got a piece of the jigsaw with this one, he then goes and gets injured. So, yeah, it constantly seems to be moving, doesn't it? The other thing I wanted to ask you about Tom Wagner, now this isn't on the doc, but I don't know if you saw the video doing around.
I've not seen this. Someone's mentioned it to me, but I've not seen it. No.
Yeah. So basically, someone has filmed him exhorting the Blues fans to greater efforts in the second half, and he says something like, "There's not enough energy on the pitch, so we need to put the energy from the stands." And various outlets have picked that up and said, "Oh, should they be doing this? Is this cringe? Do you want this from your owner?" Do you want me to go first from this? Because I've kind of landed it on you, but I do have a thought on it.
Go on then, Brian.
You want to jump? Having sat through a decade of not really knowing what the owners looked like, the fact that there's an owner front and centre, in the middle of not in the prawn, up in the prawn sandwich brigade, but in the middle of the Blues fans. Putting his face to the whole situation and being available, being present, being invested. I'll take that every day of the week, as opposed to the other alternative, which what we saw for a decade, as I say.
Yeah, I think whatever Wagner does inside the stand is probably going to be highlighted, isn't it? I think the post-match speech he gave at Wembley probably got a fair bit of criticism from balls outside of Birmingham City. But like you say, Brian, given what United have done over the last 2 years, I don't think he's going to be getting much criticism from the people who matter, and they're obviously the Blues fans. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if he gets to the stage where he does an Mariganakis and goes on the pitch and remonstrates with his head coach at the time. That would be an interesting watch. But you don't feel that's his style. But yeah, as I said, no real issues with Wagner doing that. let's have a quick MOT to see where things are at this stage of the season. As I say, second international break. Blues are 16th with 3 wins, 3 draws and 3 defeats. The model of inconsistency, 3 points off the playoffs. And, unfortunately, in 16th, wondering what's coming up behind them as well. So, yeah, only 8 goals scored. That's the 3rd lowest in the league. What are you feeling about the start to the season, Alex?
It's a bit meh, isn't it? It's not like, there's not... Apart from the start, they started very well. First 3 games, was it 2 wins and a draw? I think against Leicester, we saw that they're not completely infallible at championship level. And then, you say, oh, that's a Leicester team that still has some very good players, probably one of the best players in the league in Fatawu. But then you come back after that international break thinking you're going to see an improvement, and obviously Blues then go and lose at Stoke, and then another away defeat follows quickly at Coventry. They did win, to their credit, a very, very close game against Swansea, in my eyes, although Chris Davies probably didn't think it was as close. And then they've obviously gone and got 2 points against Sheffield Wednesday and Wrexham. So I think 5 points from the last 5 games. It's not ideal, is it? It's not a particularly good return.
Well, it's certainly not. It's certainly not promotion form. So
exactly, but some of those games, what I would say about the away games before Wrexham is that Blues have played Leicester, Stoke, Coventry. I think all of those teams will be top 10 come the end of the season.
But then if that's where Blues are going to be, you can't go away to Stoke 5 games in and say, "Oh, it's Stoke. We can't do this."
No, I don't.
A little bit of a hard one, and you've got to have more. What's the word? You've got to respond better to adversity in the situation at Coventry as well.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
If you want to be in the top 6 and promotion shake-up.
I would agree, and Blues definitely do want to be in those positions. I just think we've seen some weaknesses in the last 5 games, haven't we? Particularly at set pieces. I'm sick of asking about set pieces and talking about set pieces, but I'm going to probably go away after this and do a big piece on all the set piece goals that Blues have let slip this season, just to annoy myself even more. I do think that's a massive issue.
It might not be yourself you're annoying, or only yourself you're annoying if and when you do that.
Yeah. So yeah, they need to get a grip on that, a handle on that. They need to be more productive in the attacking third, as we've said, right throughout this season. Really, even when they were winning, they weren't particularly, chaotic in the final third. They're very predictable. Sometimes too slow in the build-up for my liking. Probably too slow in the build-up for Chris Davies' liking. I never feel like, international breaks. I'm not sure international breaks are massively helpful for Chris Davies now, because he's probably wanting to get everyone on the training pitch, and he's still going to lose some of his influential starting players. James Beadle, who's just come into the team, will go away. Lyndon Dykes has been very important for Blues this season, probably more important than we thought he was going to be. He's gonna go away with Scotland. Peck's going to go away with South Korea. It's been a frustrating period. You just hope that they can, bottle that, move it away, and come back against, is it Hull, Preston, and Bristol City? They play pretty quickly. Three teams who've had some decent results, particularly in the case of Preston, have done well. Bristol City have tailed off a tad now. Hull very
Millwall coming after that as well.
Well, yeah. So it is. It's kind of a. We're going to definitely know where Blues are by the next international break and what they are. I think the thing is, for me, you look at it and say, oh, it's 16th, but you're only 3 points off playoffs. Look at the number of teams between you and the playoffs. Exactly. If you win a game, you're not going to end up in the playoffs that weekend. You're going to end up 12th. But it is at the stage of the season where things still change very quickly. So there's nothing to get completely alarmed about, I would say. Have
you completely given up on a top 6 challenge?
I haven't. No. Blues are in the mix, aren't they? Look at QPR in 6th now. They lost to Coventry 7-1, and I know someone who watched that game and said literally QPR that day were the worst team I'd ever seen play against Coventry at championship level. They thought they were going down straight away, but look at them now. So it's such a tight league this year, as we keep saying. I still think Blues, once they can, get a grip on the league and start, ironing out their problems, i.e. I've just mentioned don't concede so many on set pieces, occasionally score your odd goal on set piece, and have better attacking output in general, then I don't see why Blues can't start winning games and moving up the league. They played, for me, a very good Swansea team and probably just shaded that one. But I think Swansea will be up there at the end of the season as well. I think they'll be a top 10, 12 team. And I think there'll be a clutch of teams between probably third, fourth and 12th. That there isn't that much between this season, because I just think it's that sort of league.
Yeah. I come at it from a slightly different angle. I think we just basically got to forget about talking about promotion, talking about the playoffs, and just literally just get their head down and solve one problem and then another problem. Solve the set piecing. So look at strategies to increase the goal output. I think constantly measuring them against, well, how far away is the top six?
Yeah,
don't think that's helpful anymore. And we're probably as guilty of it as anybody. Maybe the most guilty, maybe not as guilty as Tom Wagner. But in terms of raising expectations, it was exciting in the summer, and now reality's hitting a little bit. And it feels a little bit like, oh yeah, this is what the Championship's like at the moment. So for me, the big picture can be, wrapped in bubble wrap and stuck in the attic for the time being. It's very much minutiae and detail, and what are the issues in front of Blues at the moment that need to be talked about and need to be focused on. Do you want to give them a mark out of 10 for the start? Not really, he says.
Yeah.
I'll set the over and under at 6. Are you going higher or lower than a 6? Lower than a 6 seems brutal, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would go for a 6. I think I would go for a 6. It's not been, they've not really set the world alight, have they? But they've not been. I wouldn't say they've been bad for large parts, and they've had some difficult away games. They definitely could have made more of the last 2 games. I think that those 2 are games that the teams that are going to be in contention at the end of the season will win. Sheffield Wednesday at home and Wrexham away. I think the best teams will beat them. I think the gap between Blues and Coventry, and yes, we can say, it would be false to analyse that game because, Blues are down to 10 men for a large chunk of it. But there was a level to that. There were levels to that game. I think Coventry looked like a very good team in the Championship. Blues looked a little bit off that. I don't think they clearly didn't have the calibre of player. It might have only been on the day that didn't have the calibre of player to compete with Coventry properly. Even when it was 11v11 for me that day, I just don't think they were there. Coventry had them at arm's length and were quite comfortable, and even more comfortable when it was 10 men. Yeah,
they look like the best team I've seen this season, Coventry. I haven't seen Middlesbrough in the flesh, but you kind of feel that Middlesbrough have been getting through games until they didn't the other day. Stoke, they seem to have really impressive periods in games and then times when they're less dominant. But Coventry do seem the quality of the pack at the moment.
I do think Blues played Ipswich at the best time as well. I think Ipswich.
Do you think they're coming as well, do you?
I think they're going to come through and probably... they're the best squad in the league. I think it'd be them and Coventry. That's who I'd still hang my hat on. Middlesbrough, like you say, I don't think they're an out-and-out top 3 or 4 team. I think they're going to be in the mix for the challenge of the playoffs. And there's going to be loads of teams in there. There's no reason why Blues can't be in there, but some of those summer signs that we haven't seen much of yet, Kyogo needs to start scoring, Marvin Dux needs to get fit and start contributing, Tommy Doyle needs to find a place in the team. They need to sort out the problem at centre-back. Really, they need to find a long-term stable partner for Clara, whether it's Jack Robinson, because he brings a left-footed balance, whether it's Phil Neumann, because I still don't think he did an awful lot wrong to get dropped in the first place. They need to just work out what the formula is, and a bit like last season, really. I think we got to this point last season, and he was still unsure over certain things. I think it was
massively.
A month from now, I think, was before he settled on the Ben Davies-Clara partnership, wasn't it? That was only late November.
That's right.
Ethan Laird, it was still him or Taylor Gardner-Hickman at right back, whereas it became Ethan Laird, and that was clearly the better solution. Attacking-wise, I don't think he ever really settled anything until the end of the season, did he? So there's still so much that needs to be worked out.
Yeah, let's just finish this then, Alex. Just bring us up to date with, can we expect any returning faces when all the players are back from their international duty and the season resumes?
Yeah, I'd forgotten about a couple of the injuries this morning. So Bright Asai Samuel, it sounds like he's not going to be far away. So I think the ones you're looking at after the international break would be Willem Willemsen and Marvin Duksch, who I don't think is serious either. I'm going to have to check on Asai Samuel again. So it's those three plus Ethan Laird's a little bit longer. You're probably looking after the next international break towards December for Ethan Laird, given that the timescale that Chris Davies has provided. So the three we're looking at would be Willemsen, Duksch, and Asai Samuel.
Brilliant, Alex. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your puppy dog optimism.
We can't give up on the season. We can't give up on the season in October, Brian. God, there's a long way to go yet.
Brilliant. And thank you all for listening. Please do hit subscribe or leave a comment. It's a big keep right on from both of us.